All right, welcome to this thing we're doing now, right? This thing, the idea here is to be interactive, fellas. We're going to try to do some kind of unique things here. The whole concept of this thing I'm calling the lab, honestly, is to, as much as anything, to kind of bring some Facebook threads right to the internet where we can talk about it and actually show you this stuff, kind of firsthand, as opposed to just trying to text about it and talk about it, right? So I want to kind of give you the lay of the land here. We won't do a lot today, honestly. I got a couple topics, as you can see on the thing there. But this is really just kind of test this to see if it's going to work. I have no idea whether my bandwidth is going to be able to handle this. But we'll give it a try here. Seems pretty good so far. But we'll try to do this over time. As you guys probably saw in the invite, I have asked you for topics as well. So I encourage you to read that email. Make sure and put topic suggestion in your subject line. If you don't do that, chances are I'm not going to see your topic suggestion, because I'm going to sort by that subject line and go through them independently. So please follow the directions on the email and submit your topic or whatever you want to discuss in that subject line, and we'll try to do them over time. I have no idea how long this is all going to go. I don't mean just today. I just mean in general. I think I'm going to try to keep this going for a while. This has been kind of a little bit of a pipe dream of mine for a little while. Ironically, I had a lot of this kind of set up to do video captures and all kinds of other stuff for my work at Avid, and I've just kind of, honestly, I stripped it all out and just basically turned this into a big broadcast studio here. So we're going to be able to do it this way. All right, so a couple of things. As I mentioned earlier, please try to use earphones again, if you can, especially if you're going to be speaking on camera. It just makes the whole process a little better without all the echo and everything in it. I am going to try to do some one-on-one. I'm kind of a one-man show here. I'm going to be watching the chat as well as trying to do the demonstration, et cetera. So we'll see how that goes, but we'll try to keep it going here. Let's see, what else do we need to cover here? If you want to speak on something, maybe something I'm showing, you got a question, please raise your hand. It'll push you right to the top of my guest list, and I can see that you've raised your hand, and I'll try to address you as we go on here, and we'll take some questions in here. Obviously, the more interactive we can make this, the better. So we don't have to, just sit and watch a talking head, for an hour and a half. So the better we can do there, or the more interactive we can be there, the better, right? Let's see. The last thing I just want to emphasize here, a couple of things. If you want to talk to each other in the chat, that's fine. If you want to speak to somebody directly in the chat, that's okay with me. Be polite. Be polite. Manners, please. If I start seeing some arguments and some other things go on, out you go, okay? Don't have time for that crap. Last thing is, this is not tech support. This is not tech support. If you are having trouble, if you are having issues with our console, your console, anybody's console, whatever, this is not the place to solve it. Please get on with tech support and solve those issues, okay? All right, so I guess just to start here, I'll give you a little tour of what I got going on here. I've got a lot of stuff set up here, able to do a lot of examples as we dig in. And I think as you guys start to see this kind of grow a little bit over time, you'll start to get the idea of what we can and what we can't do here. Maybe I'll just do this just to start. I'll just kind of go through some of the windows here. So let me get this turned on. Oh. Oops. That can't be right. I'm going to stop sharing for 1 second here, guys. I'll be right back. All right, let's go back here. All right, you should see, are you seeing VENUE software and console overhead, things like that? Somebody give me a thumbs up there, yeah?
Yes.
Okay, great. it's a little tricky switching back and forth between these windows. Okay. All right. So obviously you got Venue software here. I've also got Smart up here. You know, if we want to look at some things in FFT, we can do that. I've got the console here that I can kind of zoom out to a much bigger picture if we need to see what's going on. Let me get it right side up there. There we go. That's better. Also got a close-up view that we can look at in case we need to dig in on anything. I've got a PowerPoint computer here that we can also look at in case I need to do some other demonstrations. So a lot of different sources here. I've also got multiple systems online here. Get this back up here. So for instance, I also have a complete input sharing and gain tracking system. This is a pair of S3Ls and a pair of Pro Tools machines. If you guys want to dig in and explore input sharing and gain tracking, what that means in terms of that whole workflow as well as the recording aspect of it, we can look at that whole workflow as well going forward. Let's see, what else we got up here? I've got a pretty good selection of documents. If we need to dig in on some documents and go track something down, that'll be fine as well. We can do that. What's this? Oh yeah, so I've got some live speakers in the room as well. I got microphones set up if we want to talk about some sort of FFT principle or alignment principles. I might be able to show that kind of stuff. That could get a little tricky to show on screen, but I think if we get into the concept of immersive, we could start talking about some of that stuff as well. Like I've got it set up in a front field immersive here. I could actually hook up some rear immersive as well. And what I think I want to do is start looking at what happens to those objects in an immersive environment as we move them around, or just their relative phase in an acoustic space, et cetera, like that. So I could do that, I think, with Smart. I'm kind of working out that right now. Probably be using Spat Revolution to do that. So you kind of getting the idea there of what we can do. Let's see, what else we got here? Now that's lighting. Oops. Where is that other desktop? Oh, here we go. Let's go here. So this is, for instance, oops, what are you doing over there? You're supposed to be here. This is a one of my MADI recorders, my Pro Tools MADI machines, where I've got Spat Revolution set up, and also the ability to talk about this a little bit today. And this is kind of where we'll start. All right, so let's get back on that. Forgive me on all the navigation here. There's a lot going on here. And let me let some more people in here. This will be my last admission in today. If you're late, you're late. Okay, does that sound all right to everybody? I mean, are you kind of getting the idea of what is possible here and what might not be possible? I mean, obviously, I think, a lot of our focus is going to be on console stuff. And I'll just say right now, the lab is kind of agnostic here. I don't care what console you're working on. We can certainly, talk about anything. I'm going to try to talk about it in terms of concept, not just necessarily how you do it on S6L, although we can certainly do that as well because I have one sitting here. But if you want to talk about just, the concepts of, whatever it's going to be, grouping, VCAs, bus to bus, whatever you want it to be, we can certainly discuss all of that. All right. So why don't we just do a little test here just to get ourselves underway. Why don't somebody raise their hand and I'll see if I can engage you and we can chat a little bit. Somebody raise their hand. Let me see what you got. Yeah, how to do that? Okay. Oh, that comes up over here. Okay, that's good. You can stop, guys. I'll just. Okay, so I'm. Paul Dalen, top of the list. Oh, I'm so nervous about hitting the unmute button right now. Oh, Paul, where is? Okay, hang on.
I actually unmuted myself. Hi, Robin.
I see some things never change. Let's just go ahead and take the lead, Paul. How are you, buddy, man? It's been a month of Sunday since I talked to you.
I'm very well, very happy to be here. Great to have an opportunity to pretend to be an audio engineer.
Join the party, bro. All right. Well, that looks like that's going to work. So I'm just going to go ahead and mute Paul before he says something even more embarrassing about me. Let's see. Fred, let's unmute you. See how you're doing there. Fred, can you hear me?
I can. What's going on?
All right. There's a Fred Deminagoni. I'll never get that name right. Hey, good, man. How are you? Doing all right?
Yeah, it's snowing up here in the White Mountains today, so I wasn't able to put that satellite dish up, and I had to drive halfway to Heber so that I could join in on this thing because the cell reception is horrible where the cabin I'm standing.
Well, I appreciate the dedication, bro. All right, I'm going to lower your hands here, and okay. So I think you kind of got a sense of how this is going to work, right? So if I start showing you something and we start to talk about it, you'll just raise your hand. I'll say, okay, go, and we'll chat. All right. So let's kind of talk about this thing that we're doing here. Just kind of start off with, right? Which is this whole freaking streaming thing, right? I mean, look, we're all still kind of processing what's going to happen to us when everything kind of kicks back into gear. But I think my take on this is that streaming is here to stay. I don't think it's going to replace live music by a long shot, but I'll bet you any amount of money when we get back to work, we are all going to be asked to stream as well as mix our live shows. Any takers on that? I'm betting that's going to be the case. I'm just saying. All right. So there's a whole lot of stuff we got to figure out with this now, right? I mean, obviously on the tours, hopefully, I shouldn't say that. That'll never happen. I was going to say, we'll hire somebody to be in charge of the stream. That's never going to happen. We're going to be in charge of it. So we're going to have to learn some new language and some new precepts for doing these things, right? Who's heard the word LUFS? Anybody heard the word LUFS before? I think a few people. You can raise your hand if you want to say yes there. Yeah. Yeah, it's a new concept, right? I mean, certainly for us, we don't really necessarily deal in loudness meter in live sound. Maybe we should, I don't know. But in terms of getting your stream sorted out, it's a really, really important topic, right? You want to be able to get yourself at the right level. Certainly the frequency content of what you're sending to whatever you're streaming with is important. We're going to have to get way, way more savvy in terms of IT and bandwidth and how we manage all of that stuff. I've got to be honest with you, I'm totally amazed that this is still actually working right now in my home. Given the bandwidth I got here, I don't have the greatest connection speed here, so I hope it's okay for you guys. But even if you do a little bit of just playing around with this, you learn very, very quickly that it's a very thin margin of trying to get audio, like what we're dealing with, right? Which is music, trying to put music out as a stream and getting the right level into some of these streaming services. And I haven't seen anything that I would even consider consistent on it so far. I've heard a lot of people talking about, well, you want to be at minus 16 LUFS or somewhere around there. And, the ones I've tried, which isn't all that many, I don't really believe I've done a ton of them, but I have not even been able to get close to minus 16 LUFS without the service kind of crunching it in terms of compression and band limiting, So I think the closest I've got to it is probably about minus 20 in my program meter. So if you guys, how many of you guys actually are familiar with LUFS? Have you ever even mixed into a LUFS meter before? Anybody done that kind of work? Maybe we should start taking some polls here. That'd be interesting to know. I'll figure out how to do that between now and the next time yeah. So it looks like a few of you, yeah. So obviously in live sound consoles, we don't have LUFS meters, none that I can think of anyway. I actually have a device here. I don't know whether you can see it. Let's do it I think you can probably see it on the overhead here. Let me pull this up. Oops. This way I can see it again. So if you look, this. If you look right about here, try to get it on the screen here. If you look right about there, that's a TC Electronics Clarity M, right? And this is a device that can do LUFS metering. And I'm just feeding it with AES, and off we go. It gives you some indication of it. And they have a lot of different presets in this device to be able to help you handle that. So like I've got one set up here for podcast mastering, and it's recommending a level of -16 LUFS. I have no input going there, but you get program loudness, true peak max, loudness range, all kinds of good information there to help you do it. So, as kind of one of the centerpieces of, if you guys have been to any of my workshops and seminars, I'm always hounding people on understanding your metering and what it tells you. Well, this is another example of it right here. You're going to need to really understand how much level you're sending out of that console and to that streaming device, because you're not, the bummer of it is, and it's hard to do here. I've been kind of wrestling with it for a couple of weeks now, trying to test mixes hitting the front end of the stream versus the back end of the stream, being a listener as well as somebody who's sending it, trying to get it to go back and forth. And it's challenging. I mean, anybody want to jump in on this conversation and share some knowledge here? I mean, I'm sure we could all use it. So raise your hand if you have lots of background in this, because like I said, I think this is going to be
Robert,
with us.
let me interject. This might not apply to this particular circumstance, but for like many of us, I do work from home from time to time, and I've done some mastering. In some instances, I took it upon myself to set up a stream on, I believe the program was called, I can't remember what it's called right now, but it lets you stream to an address offline. And so I would be able to monitor that and test my mixes, say, to via my phone, or if I said I had a client that was driving around and wanted to check the mixes, he would just enter this URL and test his mixes online as they were streaming out to the, to the ether, if you will.
Yeah. I mean, it's honestly, it's similar to what I've done here. I've set up things where I've turned on a mix and put it in loop and let it stream out, and literally, go outside with my laptop, get on my neighbor's Wi-Fi, and log in and listen to it.
And I've had people in Europe testing, also just to test the bandwidth. I had tried to get a lot of people on the same line to see if it would, influence in any particular way.
Yeah.
But I wonder if something like that could be implemented into something like what we're doing.
I mean, we're going to need something like that. I mean, if we're going to go out and do shows and we're going to stream something to a streaming service, I mean, we've got to have some way to confidence monitor that.
Well, Nicecast
in some real way.
Sorry, Nicecast was Nicecast, but it was discontinued, and I think they replaced it with something else that does a little more than what that did.
Right. I see somebody's pulling their screen up there. Oh, you got a venue screen? Oh, yeah. That's something else we need to talk about. I'm sorry, I skipped that in the intro here. Obviously, if we're in Zoom here, you guys can share your screens. And again, I don't really care what console we got going here, but if you have a way to VNC into your console, which obviously we have that way on Venue, you can look, you can get your software screen up on your laptop screen or your desktop screen, and then share it. And we can kind of go through things. If we get on a problem, or if you've run into a challenge, et cetera, and you want to get it up on screen where we can look at it.
My O2R doesn't have that.
You might have to use a camera there. Yeah, Sully's got his screen up right now.
Waves LUFS meter.
Yeah, let me, I'm going to stop sharing, Sully, and I'll see if I can get you shared here. One second. Okay, Sully, I'm going to make you a host here. If this all blows up, we'll log back in, okay? Promise? And I'm going to stop sharing for a second. Are you guys seeing Sully's screen?
No, he has to share.
No.
He doesn't have to be a host, but he has to share.
Sully, can you try sharing your screen? Just
I can see it. All you have to do is click on it on the bottom. Just touch it, and it will expand into your screen. At least it did on my iPad.
We have to be in speaker view.
You can click pin video, and when you pin that video, it will pop it into your screen.
Got it.
Robert, if you spotlight his video, it will be everybody's focus.
How do I do
We
that?
don't have to all individually select it.
How do I spotlight his video? Can you tell
Hover
me
your mouse over his image, hit the ellipses, and then you should see spotlight. If you're still, looks like you gave a Sully host.
I'm now the host, so you have to go back to the host, I think, to do that.
So Sully has to give it back to you. But the ellipses, the little 3 dots.
Oh, okay. All right.
You should see those regardless.
There's me spotlighting it now.
All right, let's try this again. Sully, stop sharing for a second. Let me just try this here and see if this works.
I see it on my phone, Robert.
You do.
Yep, it's all focused on mine and everything.
So you do see Sully's screen right now. Is that what I understand?
Yes.
Yep.
Oh, awesome.
Yep.
Is it full size?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. I got it now. So that's in the, what is that in, Sully? That's in the Waves package?
Yeah, that's the Waves in there. I forget what bundle I have. I have pretty much everything they make, so I'm not sure which one it comes in, but that's their Lufs meter.
Nice, nice. So obviously you can patch that anywhere you want to patch it.
Yeah, you can, and you can leave it bypassed so it doesn't use any, there's no latency with it or anything, it still works.
Yeah, they have a whole case of them. They have all kinds of metering.
All right. Well, I'll be learning a lot more about this as we go along. There is no doubt about that. So, but I guess, point of saying it is just to say, hey, this is something we're going to have to deal with going forward. We're not going to be back to work for a little while. So no excuses for not studying up, right? I can't teach it to you. Here's the answer. So I don't know enough about it yet to teach it. Although I did attend, I'm actually going to look this up. I think Gear is actually on here. Gear, did I see you on here? Who was it that did the presentation at the Nordic Symposium last year?
That was, well, which one of them?
The one that I was at.
Yes, yes, but it was the Swiss guy. He actually came to Norway as we closed. So and we had a program meeting for the next symposium with him in the neighbor house on Zoom. But anyway, his name was, and I will come back to that. Yes, he was the chairman of the R128 committee designing this. This standard for loudness.
Right. I remember there being a couple of really excellent presentations there when I was there.
Yes.
I mean, are those available on video anywhere?
I have them.
Oh, I see. And how much will that cost, Gear?
No, probably nothing. So I will, if you give me 2 seconds, I will find his name.
We don't have to do it here. If you want to just drop me an email with the info, I'll blast it back out to everybody who attended. Okay, if you want to check on it. I mean, if we can get it posted somewhere, whatever, that would be awesome.
I'll post it here in just 2 seconds.
I mean, most of his discussion, if I remember right, was aimed at television broadcast, but the same principles still apply because it was music mix for television, right?
Yes, yeah, that's right. So they did this because they were tired of having people adjusting their TVs or
I'm one of those people. I raise my hand.
Yeah, and especially between commercials and the program. So
don't get me going, bro.
Yeah, and also between the radio stations in the car, for example. So therefore, the EBU started this project where they wanted this standardization, and they I think I've heard of it for the last 10 years or something like that, and it became ratified like 4 or 5 years ago, something like that.
Yeah.
And the original recommendation is for -21 on TV broadcast.
Mm-hmm.
But in a car and in on a telephone, Facebook, and things like that, that dynamic is too much, and that's why Facebook has landed on -16 and YouTube has landed on -14. As for we've had quite a few seminars on how to do this, how to actually musically make a program, and what the broadcast music engineers say is that if you have a not calibrated monitoring system, but if you for your whole program leave your monitoring at one level and never change it, you will actually hit a suitable LUFS level, because your ears actually work, so you actually do the work properly.
Yeah, I think there's probably some legitimacy to that, honestly.
Yeah, so that is the experience from the NRK engineers who were very early on this.
Great.
So yeah.
Well, another subject that comes up, obviously the metering we got to deal with, but another one of the subjects currently is, what do we use to deliver audio to these streams? Like, how do we get it there? Is it just a pair of XLRs that go out, or what can we do in networked audio, et cetera? For you guys, maybe some of you guys that have done this, I mean, just give me some indication here. How many of you guys have done live streaming? I know the church guys are all over this right now. Just give me a little show of hands there, and
I'm still trying to make the technology work. I have, obviously the decent infrastructure is just trying to get my gear tied into the technology.
Yeah, tied into the streaming device.
Yeah, because it's easy to do with a camera and a phone and everything, but then once you want to do, say, if you want to show your new pedal board or your new amp or something, you can't quite, put a set of microphones and send a nice signal out.
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of discovering what the nice mix of settings is, because apparently even
are you guys that are you, if there's any of the church guys, the HOW guys in the audience, if you're doing streaming, are you doing it into a software app, or are you doing it into a hardware piece? All the encoding to get it ready for stream. Feel free to open your mic and speak if you want.
Robert, I'm doing it with Blackmagic stuff. I have an ATEM studio production mixer with a web presenter. That does,
is that like a TriCaster type of thing?
It basically just takes the SDI content from the ATEM production mixer, which is a studio TV mixer. It takes the output from that and converts it to basically a webcam. And of course, like yourself, I use OBS to get it, what I need it to look like. And, there's XLRs on the Blackmagic, so that comes directly from my console or whatever I'm sending it. And of course, I run my loft mic through the desk and everything. That way I can guarantee that my LUFS level leaving the desk is what the Blackmagic needs to get to the web presenter, to get to the stream.
Right. So you have a hardware device in between your sources and the software for the streaming computer.
Yes.
That's correct?
All Blackmagic stuff.
All Blackmagic stuff. Yeah. 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 If you guys don't know OBS, which he mentioned there, which is Open Broadcast Software. Is that right? Have I got that acronym right? Open Broadcast? Well, I believe it's
I think that's what it is.
Yeah, it's an open.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah. Which is what I have open on this. Can you guys still see my screen here? Just checking.
Yep.
Okay, so
on that, and I made you the host again, so you're the host.
Yeah, thank you. Oops. So I've got OBS. This is an older version of it. I was kind of doing some playing around here. We had a discussion. I was on, at work the other day talking to the Avid guys about it, and they were saying, really, if you had a Macintosh computer sitting there running OBS, could you just take our D port and, patch audio from your console down a pair of Pro Tools tracks and have those show up on the AVB stream at the OBS? And
OBS is supposed to let you do that.
Yeah, right. And well, it does, short of the version that I have, and I don't know all that much about it. Won't support 96K. It only has 48 and 44.1. So, but you know, the audio input, I mean, the audio delivery system is there. It just shows up as the E6L engine in your audio devices, and you can choose it on the OBS software if you had the right sample rate. So, yeah, let's pull out that question here for a second. Does anybody know of any streaming software like this that supports 96K, or are they all 48K?
Automatically going to run into problems with bandwidth. Is the first part.
Yeah.
Just anything that lets you stream is going to knock it way back just to allow it to pass.
Right. Yeah, we don't have the way, obviously, to sample rate convert that AVB stream, right? So
if you look at my, this is the A10 mixer and the Blackmagic Web Presenter are both right here. Right
let's see if I can get you guys back up. I can't see you any longer. Hang on here. Who's that Zoom expert that was on here speaking a while ago? How do I get the people back up where I can see them here?
If you have more than one screen up, it tends to, whatever your main screen is, that's where it's hiding at. If you do the 4-finger swipe up on your Mac, you should be able to see all of the available windows.
It's called Gallery View, if you're looking for that.
Yeah, I've lost
up in the top right corner.
He's missing his entire Zoom window, not just not seeing us.
Bunch.
If you go click on your Zoom icon in your dock,
yeah,
that should at least bring it up front, and then you can find it and switch to gallery.
Oh, there they are. Got it. Oh, I closed it when Sully was up. Okay, I'm back. All right, so I'm sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you there. Where were we there? Thank you. Is that Samantha that was doing that, or who was that?
I was speaking. There was a couple people, but yeah.
Thank you for being here.
No problem.
We were just talking about the Blackmagic mixer. And
okay. So that's your hardware piece there?
Yeah.
Let's see if
and then this is what gets it to the web. It's kind of dark. It's called the Web Presenter.
Spotlight video. So are you guys seeing that?
It's called the Web Presenter.
Got it. Samantha, if I go to the 3 dots and say Spotlight Video.
Yep, everybody in the call will be focused on that person.
Okay. So can you guys see his switcher there?
I'm seeing Sully, yep.
Yes.
Okay, great. Awesome.
Yep.
So sorry, Sully, I didn't mean to interrupt you there. Give us your spiel there again. I'm sorry.
So, when you're asking about, getting this stuff out for streaming properly, I've tried many ways and explored a lot of options and eventually talked to people that were good at this and professionals at it, and all recommended the equipment that I now have to adequately do this. And the biggest problem you'll find, I think, which I've run into, is what I send to the Blackmagic mixer, which just has XLR, line inputs, so directly from my console right to it. I can hear it on the headphones, and it sounds just like it does out in near fields or whatever. But by the time it gets to a YouTube stream or to anything else, basically, the bandwidth is just crushed so hard. And I'm sure in this current day where everybody's trying to do this, I think a lot of the streaming services or the ISPs are limiting our bandwidth even more. So
it's possible. It's certainly possible.
Because nothing ever sounds like I ship it. That's for sure.
Yeah, I went through that here. I mean, obviously, we're trying to hack a Zoom room into being this big audio presentation, and even doing stereo through Zoom is such a problem. I haven't been able to successfully do it yet. But even just getting where you can mix live audio into Zoom, I'll show you the block diagram. It'll make your head spin,
Well, I think almost everything gets not monoed, but very close to mono by the time it gets to the web.
Well, the thing I've discovered here, I have to verify this 100%, but I'm pretty sure this is how it's working. When you're in Zoom and you're mixing audio to the app and you're in broadcast, it is mono. But if you're recording the session, it'll actually record it in stereo. And this seems to be the case regardless of the quote unquote stereo settings in Zoom, where you have to go on and allow stereo, so to speak.
I think all of them do that. Like Skype does it when you listen to it, it's
Yeah.
in mono, and same thing if you stream to like a live video to YouTube, it's presented in mono, but it records it in stereo. So
Yeah, I think that's what's happening here as well. It's really kind of a bummer. Yeah, go ahead, Dennis, if you want to jump in there.
That actually reminds me, my second to last event before the pandemic, I was asked to supply mono program and mono audience. And I asked why, if we were recording. He said, no, it wasn't for recording. It was, sure, they would archive, but it was going to stream. And
Yeah.
mono is just the lowest bandwidth that they could manage to put everything intelligently through.
Yeah, it doesn't, even the left-right, it's not correlated very well when they collapse it either. It doesn't sound very good. Yeah, I mean, if you're going to do it at this point, I mean, again, my width of knowledge on it is not great at the moment, but I think if I was going to do it at this point, I wouldn't allow the app to collapse the mono. I would send them a mono stream so to make sure it's correlated right, Everybody buying that? All right. Well, not to start off on such a fun topic there. I mean, good grief, but I think it's going to be reality. Maybe we'll make this an ongoing thing here at the old lab. All right. So before we jump into the other thing we were going to discuss here, and if you guys could mute your mics again, I'd appreciate it. I just want to give you a little bit more input on what I'm going to be doing going forward with this. Obviously, I'm going to try to do the lab every Monday, where we just jump in here for a little bit. I have got a bunch of topic requests, so I'll kind of parse those out and figure out which ones we're going to do. And, if I pick a topic that you've kind of requested specifically, I will invite you to the meeting so that we can talk about it. I also have plans throughout the rest of the week as well. As it sits right now, on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I'm going to be doing operational training for actual sound companies. So we will be getting on and doing kind of a certified operators kind of course on the console itself. On Wednesdays, we're going to go back to doing a much more traditional quote unquote webinar, which is much more structured. It's nothing like this where I will get on and present. Somebody will be answering questions in the background, et cetera, like we used to do. If you guys remember the videos that or the webinars I used to do in the earlier days of DigiDesign and Avid, it'll be much more along those lines. And then on Friday, I think what I want to do, I'd be interested to take you guys' temperature on this and see how you feel about this. On Friday, I was thinking maybe just as a collective here, we get in a room like this and we talk about something else other than audio. Maybe we talk about our business, talk about trends. I'm sure we're going to talk about analog versus digital. What's that?
Talk about where you're going to get your financial relief from.
Well, just seriously, make it a thing. And the rules are bring a bottle of something and no audio.
I agree. Let's just talk business, because, hey, we're all, this is one of those rare things. It's not like I got fired from the tour and I can go get another one. There is no work, right? I mean, we're all in that boat. So let's figure out how to get through this and kind of use it to the best of our advantage, right? So, I'll probably call that something like the back lounge or something like that, where we all go to meet and do drugs and talk. So, maybe we'll do something like that on Friday. Does that sound good? Like a good idea to anybody? I mean, you up for doing that? Raise your hands if you believe.
No lobby call the next day.
No lobby call the next day. You will not get oil spotted at this meeting.
Definitely not a school night.
All right, so let's move on to the topic du jour. All right, so I thought I would talk about today. I've seen so much discussion of this on Facebook in particular, but there's a lot of discussion of this in the world. This thing called delay compensation, right? Let's see if we can get this back up.
We just had a big long talk about it on my Avid S6L page, didn't we?
Yeah. I mean, it kind of what drove me a little bit. And, I'll let the cat out of the bag. I do have one big presentation coming. I've been working on the video for a little while and been working on a process for a little while, honestly, quite a while now, on how to completely manually delay compensate your console and do it quickly and make it where you can manage it. It doesn't become this beast of burden, so to speak. And I think I got a pretty good technique for it. So we'll talk about it. But, today, just to kind of get us started, maybe get your head thinking about this a little bit, let's just talk about the concept of delay compensation. We'll start it out strictly from the context of Venue and how Venue's delay compensation works, because there's still a lot of confusion out there about this. I'm really amazed that it's out there. So let's do this. I'm going to grab a drink here real quick. What we'll do is actually, let's do this. I'll diagram this out. Hang on. Let's do this. Let's get the old whiteboard out. Everything good happens on the whiteboard.
So can you make that take over your whole screen? There you go.
I can. We're pretty close. There we go. All right, so we'll do this and this. Everybody see that okay? All right,
it's
so
a small window of all your windows, but we can see it pretty good.
Yeah, actually, I'll blow it up here in 1 second. I'll pull it down. Stand by. Let's do this. I'll pull it down here into this area because I want to move this one area up where you can see it. So we're going to go here. Can you see that okay? All right. Oops. Sorry.
Talk about bandwidth. Your computer's begging for mercy right now.
If you knew what I was asking this little Mac Mini to do, it would be hilarious.
I saw the open applications in your dock.
Okay. All right. So obviously you see delay compensation there in the software, right? So let's talk about what that actually means. All right. So this is what Venue has been looking for delay compensation since day one. This model has been in play. All right, so let's draw it up here. What it is looking for in order to initiate delay compensation is if we have an input and we have a subgroup and we have a left-right master, right? And we have this input assigned to the left-right. And we also have this input assigned to the group that is also assigned to the left-right. Everybody, let me get that on camera where you can see it. This is quite a production. Oh, there we go. Okay, so you get a sense of my art skills here. And LR master. Everybody with me so far? So you got an input that is assigned to a group that is assigned to left-right, and an input that is also assigned to the left-right. Everybody with me? So obviously these are two different path links here. Yeah? They're going to arrive to that left-right master at different times.
Even without plugins, they're going to arrive at different times.
Yeah, no plugins in play yet. We're just talking about the path right now, right? So even if you do this, or when you do this, obviously there is going to be comb filtering based on the offset of these two paths, right? Well, if Venue sees this in play, it will, and you have delay compensation on, and in this case, we'll make it, do this, mix only. If you have that and delay compensation on, it will realign this path for you, all right? This will be good. This will be non-comb filtered on the output here. Okay.
It will add delay to the input on its way to the left-right map.
Yeah, honestly, I don't even know where it takes place. I think it probably takes place up in here. I know it's at the left-right master, and I'll demonstrate how I know that here in just a second, all right? So this has been the case for delay compensation for Venue since day one. It's one of the things that attracted me to that platform in the earliest days of it, because I realized pretty early on, okay, we're going to be able to do some parallel compression here pretty easily if we do this. Because in that situation, you could have inputs and then have processing here, actually I should do it this way. Processing here, and if we had this in play then, mix plus inserts, now it's accounting for the bus length plus the processing, and we'll time align it to the output. So you could have inputs, compressed sets, added together at the output, right? I mean, the most basic of concepts of parallel compression, right? But it would account for this path length. Now, here's the thing. That's all it ever accounted for, ever. There was no delay compensation model in Venue that ever accommodated input processing in terms of insert processing, third-party processing, okay? Does everybody hear me loud and clear on that, please? That has never been the case in Venue. It has never, ever accounted for input inserts, okay? So I've got it set up where we can mock this here and go through a couple of different things because we've actually grown it since then to where it can compensate some other things, but still nothing at the input side. All right, so I'm going to pull this away for a second, explain what we got going on. Let's go back to, actually, this is all right. That camera view is all right. This. All right, so I've got a set of inputs here, or not a set of inputs, a set of faders here. And we're going to kind of mock this up and kind of show it. All right, so I'm going to, first thing we'll do is take the delay compensation off. And so I got some pink noise coming in. I've got this set up to the FFT. We'll go up and get that blown up so we can kind of look at this and verify it as we do it.
And the FFT is your left-right out to the FFT?
It is not currently. I will show you my path here. Get this back here. Use this for a second. So I have a pair of matrices that drive my FFT. One is my reference, and in that reference, I just literally have the pink noise showing up. Everybody got me there? The other, the measure channel, is actually the left-right bus that is showing up. So left-right against a reference. All right, and within that left-right, if we're creating some comb filtering, we should see that if everything goes to plan here. Okay, everybody follow that? You guys are welcome to do screen grabs too here if you want them. And don't be shy about them if you need them. All right, so as you can see here, I'll do it here. So here's my noise. So I'm going to create that path that we just talked about, right? I'm going to take the noise. I'm going to assign it to the left-right. You can see it here. And I'm also going to assign it to a subgroup. And that should be this guy. And then, I'll go back here. Sorry, I didn't mean to cover up the smart screen here. You can see it comb filtering, right? And our delay compensation is off right now, I believe, right? Yes. And I'm sorry, I got to do this too because I don't want to cheat on you here. Take this out for a second. All right, so we're going to go to mix only on delay compensation there. So you can kind of see that it flattens out the phase trace. So we have no comb filtering in that signal, even though we've got signal going to a subgroup that is assigned to left-right. Make sure of that just to be sure. Yeah, so subgroup is assigned to left-right. Input is assigned to left-right. Input is also assigned to group. With me? All right, so let's go to the parallel processing concept now, right? Which is we're going to take that subgroup and we're going to do some processing on it. Now, I'll say this in the context of S6L now, and even I think E3, E3 or S3L, excuse me, I had a brain cramp for a second. You know, because we have processing available to these groups now, if you were to look at that processing, right, you have compression and equalization there. So if you didn't want to worry about this, you can do your compression and equalization on that group and create a parallel path without any worry of delay compensation there, right? Because this time on this onboard dynamics and EQ is already accounted for in the throughput of the console. It's not going to add latency if you put that compressor or that equalizer in. Okay? So in S3LX and in S6L, if you want to use the onboard EQ and compression to be able to create parallel compression paths, you can easily do that, right? No penalty. All right, so in this situation though, I'm going to just put in one piece of processing just to kind of demonstrate this here. So I'm going to put this equalizer back in place. I just put in any processor that I can do here. And as you can see, now we've got a big problem, right? We've got terribly comb filtered summed output here, right? Which is the combination of this input and this input going to the group. Now they're completely out of time because of the additional processing. So in that situation, we would want to have mix and inserts in there. And once you see that, once we have mix inserts, now it's accounting for both the mix bus and the insert. And it's worth noting that this also applies to hardware inserts, right? If you have a hardware insert on that group, it'll account for that as well. It truly means any insert being software or hardware, okay? All right, so I got a couple of hands up here. I'm gonna go deal with that. Dan Gable, you're first up. What do you got for me, bro? Just unmute your mic. I'll unmute you if you want. I'm trying to unmute you. Oh, there we go. Go, man, you there? You're muted again. There you go. And you're muted again. Keep trying, man. You'll get it. I see you unmuted, but I don't hear you. Sorry, man, I'm going to have to move on. Fred, do you want to go next? You got a question there? Can you unmute? If you're not, I'll unmute you.
I was just raising my hand on the last questions, the reason that was up. But on the analyzer, is it more than just two inputs?
No, that's just one input, the group, and the left-right.
Right, but so the left-right is two, and you've got your reference.
Yeah, keep in mind if I go.
So how do you have three? How do you have three paths going into
the
two?
Left-right is mono.
Oh, so you are taking a mono, not a left-right.
Yeah, left-right really doesn't come into play here. It's just
yeah, because it's a mono source. Gotcha. Okay.
Right. So our measure is actually just the left of the left and the group, right? At which the group is not even on here. Remember, the group is inside that left. Let me see if I can do this here. Let me get back to this. Stand by.
It wouldn't matter. The measure was left and right mono to that group as long as the
it would not in this case. No.
Both.
So if you notice,
that's where I screwed up.
This input is a combination of the input and the group and the left-right master, right? That is the left-right master that is coming up in there. And even though you see group here, it's not turned on, right? I've got that for another demonstration here. So those do not count there. Everybody good on that?
Is that just going into a little audio interface into Smart?
It is, yeah, that's going into, I have it in a Focusrite interface, a Focusrite Dante interface. Yeah,
cool.
Who else? PD, you got a question there?
Yeah, I imagine with pink noise, before you introduce the time alignment, what we would hear would be rather dramatic. But
it would be very comb filtered, yeah.
Yeah, what would we hear, or how might you describe it if it was a single source like a vocal or a guitar or some mono source as we switched that time alignment in and out?
It would frequency add together dramatically better, right? I mean, let's go to the old math here. If I have one source and I have an identical source, which is what we've created here with the group, right? 1 millisecond later, and they add together. What's the summed response of that? Complete cancellation at 500 hertz and every 1,000 cycle spacing.
That I understand. I guess my question was, and maybe you're explaining it to me and I'm just not following, is how would you describe what you would hear sonically in that case?
It would sound
be
very honky, very lifeless. It would sound really odd. I mean, really, not just not
Albert,
natural
if you take
at all.
Yeah, it sounds like you're a little bit dizzy.
Let me see if you guys can hear this here. Hang on a second. I mean, I obviously
take the mix and insert delay off, you will see the comb filter, and you can imagine what the vocal would sound.
I mean, it's simple to use if you have something like a DAW. You just record your voice and take 2 tracks and delay it ever, whatever, amount of milliseconds you want to hear.
Yeah, it'll. I mean, trying to get intelligibility on a vocal that has that happening to it, virtually impossible. So if you had that, let me see if I can. Why are you not hearing that? That is my question. So that should be coming.
You said OBS is a source as your.
No, it's. Oh. I don't even go there with me.
Right, that's where I'm at.
Oh man. Let's see. Output. That should be going to AES. All right, let's just see if it's too low. Are you guys hearing that? You're not, are you?
I don't hear it, no.
Yeah, stand by for me.
Not hearing any audio.
Oh, I think I know what it is. No, I don't know what it is. Stand by here, though. I may have to stop my share for a second here. Let me just double check this. No, that's good. All right, stand by. Stand by to stand by. This has to do with how I get audio to Zoom. So hang in there with me. We'll make that one of these discussions if you want. Play like that, I see.
It's there now.
Okay. I have no idea what that sounds like, but it should sound pretty bad. All right, so if we go and kick in the delay,
it sounds like that. Quite the difference.
Yeah, you can hear the difference there, right? So I'll kick it back off again. Here how it goes, kind of all honky and tubular, right? Sounds like there's a flanger on it, honestly. That's the description. And now back to full band. Are you okay with that, Paul? You grabbing that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, like I said, I could tell by looking at the trace what it would sound like on Pink Noise. I was curious as to what it would sound like on some other source material, but I get it.
It would have exactly that frequency, that summed frequency response that you saw on Smart on your vocal.
Sure.
That equalization would be on your vocal if you were doing it that way, for sure. That's why it's so important to get this together. I mean, this whole... I don't want to go off in the diatribe right now. I'm going to save it for the big demonstration. But this for a second. So what we have to get in mind here in live sound, and we're doing such a poor job of this right now, is you know, we have to get in touch with the time domain here. We are right at the exact same juncture in history that DAW recording guys were about 12 or 15 years ago, you know, where they were recording in DAWs and they were thinking, hey, let's start mixing in the box. And it failed miserably, right? Well, we're kind of doing the same thing. We're mixing in the box right now, believe it or not, right? And in those early DAWs, before there was any time compensation, right, delay compensation in those engines, what people were failing to realize is that when you instantiate a plugin on the insert, right, it's actually moving that input farther away in time, right? You're creating group delay, essentially what you're doing there, right, on the inputs. So your mix impulse is not accurate. It is not in phase, right? So we're right where they were now, you know, to the point where we're just saying, okay, wait a minute. Everybody's starting to get it now that we can't just willy-nilly insert lots of plugins on our inserts and expect it, you know, like the net impulse response to be okay. It's not. It's not. And it's exaggerated now that we're into these situations where we have, you know, external processing on these consoles, right? Let me go back to the whiteboard for a second. I'll give you another example. And, you know, the numbers should scare you a little here when we do this. So let me go. Okay, you got this. Can you see the whiteboard again?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
Yes.
So I'm going to talk venue specific here just for a second. Make sure everybody understands the deal here. So in the legacy version of Venue, you had a set of DSPs on a card, right? And those DSPs handled mixing function plus plugin. Okay, mix plus plugin, mix plus plugin, right? So if we inserted a plugin on an input here, per se, the audio never had to leave the DSP, right? You only had the latency that is going to be involved in the actual plugin itself. And if you remember right, if you were looking in the original Venue consoles, it was a very low amount of latency. Like you might be able to have an equalizer or, you know, anything like that. And it might be, you know, 1 sample, 2 samples, right, of latency at 48K, right? So half a microsecond, right? So, and I'm still squeamish at saying this, but with low sample rates like that, in terms of the plugin latency, you could kind of get away with a lot of stuff. It wasn't really, really apparent, right, what was happening there. And keep in mind, none of our delay compensation deals with input inserts, right? We're talking about input inserts here. But now we're kind of in a different age now where we have mixing cores. You still see that okay? I'll have to move it up a little bit. Where now we have, these are only mix cores. And now we go PCIe bus out to another set of DSP. Oops, sorry. Slow down a little. So this is PI now, right? This is plugin processing. And you see this, you know, we'll certainly see it in S6L, right? Where now we have an HDX card that is dedicated to plugin processing. Well, the way we get there is through the PCIe bus. So now when you hit, you know, when you insert a plugin on an input, well, here is 96, at 96K, this is 96 samples of throughput there before you even put in the plugin, right? Right at a millisecond. Right, so you know, if you're trying to connect like inputs and you put a lot of plugin processing on one, well, now the other one is going to be way later than that other. They are not going to add together correctly in terms of frequency and impulse, right? Same thing applies if we had, you know, a wave server out here. You know, you're going out of the console and back in. You know, it's probably a millisecond easy. You know, back and forth before you even instantiate the plugin. So,
Robert.
Yeah, go.
Sully. So that 96 samples for just the PCI bus, that's reported when you right-click on the plugin window, right?
That's correct. Yeah, I was going to show that in just 1 second here. Yeah, thanks, though. Appreciate that. Right? So we can, in Venue, we can actually see this time. If we're in waves, we don't necessarily see that time. We don't really have any really accurate reporting of that time. We can see all of it within the wave server, but we don't know the total time. And you're going to kind of see why, I mean, I'm going to work toward this concept with you here, why I don't even rely on delay compensation anymore to do it. I manually delay compensate all of my buses, all of my inserts, everything, right? To get and honestly, the goal is to get back to a flat impulse on the console so that my digital console has exactly the same impulse capabilities that an analog console would have, right? Meaning all inputs are exiting the console at exactly the same time. That's the ultimate goal, right? We are not there in digital consoles. There are no live sound consoles today that automatically delay compensate for input inserts. There are none, right? Nobody's doing it. And it's not that anybody's being lazy. It's a huge engineering lift to do it, right? It's going to take time, and it slows the whole thing down here. I mean, big time. Once you get that kind of engine in place, then your testing grid becomes really big. All kinds of stuff.
Yeah, you should have seen the faces of the guys in England whenever we brought that up.
Oh, I'm sure. Because even think of it this way, guys. I mean, if you want to compare it to Pro Tools for a second, in Pro Tools, you're building the engine and all of the cross points of audio as you're building your session, right? To a left-right output, a 5.1 output, a 7.1 output, whatever, right? By comparison here, we have 192 inputs, 96 aux buses, multiple matrices, right? If you're going to build a delay compensation engine, you're going to need a delay at every single cross point of audio established, so that when something happens, it can automatically buffer the console to do it, right? So it's a huge lift. It's not insignificant at all, and it's probably the reason nobody's comprehensively done it, All right, so to get back to our thing, so that is the big difference between, kind of original Venue and S6L Venue, is that we have dedicated DSP for plugin now. So if we go back to, let's see here, back to this, where is my mouse? There it is. So if we go back to here, for instance, let me go to a group so we can kind of see it. So if you notice up here in the plugin area, I'll kind of annotate it here so you can see it. This, oops. So notice in the insert area right here, if I go and right click there, I can see the amount of, oops, you won't be able to see it here. 1 second. I've got a mouse collision. Actually, let's do this. Oh, good grief. There we go. There we go. Okay, so if you right click in that area here, you can see how many samples are being imparted into that path, right? So this is for the entire path now that you're seeing there, and that's 108 samples, right? If we want to see just the plugin itself, then we simply go to the plugin window, and we go here and right click, and we can see that this is 7 samples, right? Which would be, get my mouse rolled together here, which would show it right here, right? So you can kind of keep track of samples. I know, Sully, I saw you the other day trying to put together a spreadsheet, et cetera. I did that in the earliest days of trying to do this, and it kind of made me a little batty. So I've tried to come up with another process for it here, which I will share with you guys at some point. But needless to say, delay compensation or, managing these inputs, you want to be really, really careful here. And especially so talking about it in the context of mixing music, right? I mean, if we're doing corporate shows, we got a bunch of talking heads or whatever. Okay, I'll relax. But if we're talking about music here, we're talking about needing impulse and frequency addition for all of these inputs. They're all complementary of each other. And if we start sliding them in time by doing a lot of plug-in inserting on it, that impulse is not going to be right, So hang in there with me. I'll give you the full thing once we get going here. I'm probably going to do a full webinar on manual delay compensation, as well as talk about it here in the lab. I'll cover this as many times as you want to cover it, because I'm just going to give my personal take on it here. When I hear people say, okay, man, I went to this show the other night and this guy was using all these plugins and it sounded like crap. I would be willing to bet you good cash money that there's no attention being paid to delay compensation at the input stage of those consoles. Because I'm here to tell you the plugins, going to be controversial here. The plugins sound great, fellas. The plugins sound fine. But all of that good sound is completely compromised if you're just going to insert them willy-nilly on the inputs and not account for the time that is being imparted on that mix, It's just totally messes with your impulse. And I'll just say this to you here. I have gone and done this for a few people where they've invited me out to help them do it. And it didn't have to be on Venue. I've done it on other consoles as well. And to a man, they have said to me, I will never, ever not work like this. It was that dramatic of a change in their mix, So I encourage you to kind of dig in on this and start to get your head around this.
And you're talking about an FFT to check this. No other way but that.
Well, it's the fastest way. It's the fastest and the most accurate way. Because the thing that I learned very early on trying to do it with spreadsheets and all kinds of other stuff is you can, miss samples all over the place. A drop sample at a bus edition here, blah, blah, blah. I just never got it accurate and consistent doing it that way. So hang in there with me. I promise I'll do this relatively soon where I'll show this to you. And, we can go over it. Hopefully I'll be able to demonstrate it with some audio as well, so you can kind of get a sense of what's happening. But like I said, to a guy, and I know I will never, ever work non-compensated again. I don't even turn delay compensation on. I just do it all manually. So, all right, let's get back to our delay compensation situation here and talk about a couple other things. I'll just give you a couple of little tips and insights here on how to do this. So let's go back to that's good. All right, so let's talk about the parallel compression thing for just a second. And you got to keep in mind here how I described what Venue is looking for in order to do time alignment, right? Automatic delay compensation. Remember, it's looking for inputs that are assigned to a group that is assigned to the left, right, and the same input assigned to the left, right. If it recognizes that, it will automatically delay compensate those paths. Okay, everybody clear on that? So the question has come up a few times. Well, really what I want to do, and I certainly moved my workflow, my parallel compression workflow to this at one point in the early Venue, is I'd much rather use two subgroups, right, to do my parallel compression than, using all of my inputs against one compression set that is going to go, that's going to parallel compress to the master bus. So how do I do that? Because, I have guys go, well, I assign my inputs to both groups. I insert my processing on one group, but it's still comb filtering. What's up with that? Right? And it's because you don't have any inputs that are assigned directly to the left-right bus. Right? Remember, that's what it's looking for. You just have two groups that are assigned to the left-right bus with offset processing. Right? One has processing. So the way you can get around that, and I swear to you, this kind of came to me one night. I literally woke up in the middle of the night going, I know how to do it. I know how to do it. Figured it out. And the idea is that you're going to take a dead input. It doesn't matter what input it is. It can be an effects return. It can be an input, whatever. And you're just going to assign that to the left-right bus and the two groups. Once Venue sees that you've done that, it'll automatically realign those two groups, right? So let's create that here. So as it sits right now, I'll outline these again. This is my noise input. This is one subgroup. This is second subgroup. This is processed subgroup, okay? So let me assign to both groups here. Okay, so we've got both subgroups on. Let me make sure. And you guys are not hearing that now, right now, right? Is that correct? You are
no,
not?
We can hear it.
You can hear it. So it's coming off this? Okay. So,
yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah, we are.
Okay, so you can hear the comb filtering now, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's just the two subgroups being added together right now. One processed, one not processed. Okay? So how do we get that to assign, right? How do we get it to align? Well, we could put delay on one of them and do it manually, but this is a situation where you might want to just take advantage of the delay compensation, right? So what I need to do is take an input and assign it to the left, right, and to the two subgroups. And I'm going to use this input down here to do that. I just call it alignment. I've always called that channel alignment. So I'm going to stop talking for a second, and I'm just going to assign this to those two groups and the left, right, and you'll hear the input. Right, back to full bandwidth, right? So that input that is doing that alignment, you don't want any audio there. It's strictly just something to kick the delay compensation into order. Okay? Everybody follow that? Okay, now here's the thing. And this fooled me for a long time. I'm going to be honest with you. When I was really trying to work this out, I kept thinking, okay, now wait a minute. Why isn't this working? If you solo these two subgroups into headphones, you'll still hear the comb filter, right? Because that alignment is taking place at the left-right bus, at the left-right bus. So you'll hear it in phase at the left-right bus, but if you solo the two groups independently, they won't sound in time. They'll comb filter. So just be aware. Don't let it trip you up. Okay? All right, I got a couple of hands up here. I'm going to try to let me turn the noise off for a second. I'm sure that's annoying everyone.
I think they've just had their hands up, like stuck on raised.
Like stop the noise? Yes.
Well,
Please,
I mean, they've had their
more.
hands raised for like a while.
James or Fred, have you got questions, or is it just a random? You just throw me the high five.
No, I raised my hand earlier and forgot to put it down. But
you're so dependable.
Oh man, I call that channel the Force channel. I don't call it
the Force. Be aware of the Force. Juan Carlos, you have a question? Go, man.
Yeah, just to make sure I understand this correct about delay compensation in input channels and subgroups. So the delay compensation on the console applies to both input or just at the subgroup level?
Just at the subgroup level. There is no compensation going on in any way in terms of inputs, right?
Okay, so that's why it's not advisable to, let's say, don't use plugins on inputs?
Well, I won't say don't use them. I just say use them with the knowledge, right? I mean, you know, although I would say to you here, I go here carefully. In the days where we're exporting audio from the mix bus out to PCI cards and coming back, if I can't do a manually compensated mix, I am very weary of putting input processing on. I mean, you know, especially within like instruments, like within a drum kit, within, you know, the bass, etc. You know, I'm very iffy about it. I just rely on the onboard processing if I've got to work really fast. I'm not working on a template, which is my secret, honestly, to be able to manage this, is to build always build from a template, a time-aligned template. But yeah, if I got to walk up to a console and go to work at a festival or something, and I don't have a show file, I'm not time-aligned anyway, man, I'm really, really, I probably will not use any insert plugins. Very few. Very few.
Oh, that's great. I wasn't aware of that until now.
Yeah. Yeah. It can really trip you up. I mean, it can really, and it's the kind of the funny thing. I over the course of a few tours of really kind of working through a process on this, the thing that really caught me the first few times I was messing with it was, man, if you were just listening to this today, you would not realize that the lack of time alignment is the problem right now. You would just think, oh, this is a shitty room. Oh, that drum sounds terrible today. When in fact, that drum sounds terrible today because there's so much comb filtering being caused by the plugins, right? The relational aspect of the plugins, right? Now, we're getting close on time here, so I want to finish this up, but I will say this to you. I want to give you something to go away and think about, right? Because I see this a lot in the Facebook threads where people are confusing these things with, well, wait a minute, there's late arrivals in all my drum mics anyway. Right. Well, no, those are propagations. Those are not latency issues. If you've got a miking scheme that works and what polarity scheme needs to work for that, you start inserting plugins on those channels, that polarity scheme is out the window. Now, all of a sudden, you'll be, you'll be flipping the polarity on the snare top all of a sudden and be like, wait a minute, I've never had to do this before. It's because now you've got time offsets in all of those channels, right? You've got time offsets, you've got latency offsets, as well as the propagation microphone to drum. So the thing is, you want to get this latency issue sorted first. Like that's got to be job one. And then if you want to do additional time offsets to align microphones, you can do that on top of it. But don't confuse the two. They're two very, very different agendas and very different jobs there, right? You've got to get the impulse of the console sorted out first. Because if you don't have that, you'll never be able to make a good assessment of your mic placements. Won't happen. Ricky, go, man.
I just had a question. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. I just had a question about the alignment, input alignment. Would you be able to assign to all your groups just so that you're on a fail-safe situation if some of those groups aren't assigned to the left or right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you could do that as well. Matter of fact, it's usually what I recommend now. I see a lot of guys doing it. They'll just take that alignment channel, assign it to left, right, and also groups, and you just got to keep in mind, of the additional latency you might be causing in your console, right? So that's another topic. We won't dive in there.
Okay.
So I think the last thing I want to show you on this automatic delay compensation bit is with regards to matrices, right? Which is actually pretty cool. So to do this, because we actually, over time, we've added some additional capability here in the matrices, where if you were to take, let me see if I can get this happening.
Hey, Robert, before you move on.
Yeah.
Just a question. Since consoles have so many inputs these days, what if you were to take your signal on a direct out and do your processing, bring it into a separate channel, and then time align that channel? Does that?
You're very close. You're very close to how I do my actual parallel processing now, because for me, I do parallel processing at the input stage now, where I return, a dry kick snare toms and a wet kick snare toms, and do the time alignment there. But keep in mind, I mean, you can't just delay inputs here, because it delays everything downstream. Right, you've got to, I call it making a bridge channel for it, where you've got to take a set of inputs and not assign them anywhere, but go out through aux buses and return them to a pair of channels and then realign those channels. Well, just hang in there with me. I promise I'll do that whole spiel for you, and it will make so much sense. You'll be just like, how did we not think of this before? Okay, so one of the other places that we've always wanted time alignment, or we got a lot of requests for time alignment and delay compensation, was in matrix outputs. And this was for, really, I probably saw it as much as anything for broadcast, and I saw it in a lot of houses of worship, where you would take a matrix out to a destination that would have a left-right mix in it and, you know, vocals in it. But at the other end, they wanted to be able to have more vocals. So you would add a dry version of the vocal in the matrix, et cetera. Well, obviously, those are two very, very different path lengths, right? Where one's coming through the bus, one's just coming up directly into the matrix. So we do offer some delay compensation for that as well now. So let me make sure that you're going to be hearing this bus. Because I don't think I want you hearing that one. I think I need you hearing this one. Stand by for me. So there, minus 15. So this. Yeah. We're going to have a little line check here just to make sure. Okay, have you guys got pink noise there now?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
That should be this. Right. Okay, so you can see in this matrix now, I've got a couple of things to add together, right? So I've got the two groups coming up independently. I've also got an auxiliary coming up here and an actual channel, right? So let's do this. So let's see how much of this is actually time aligned here. Oh. Okay, so this would be like if you had a matrix that wanted to add a left-right and some vocals, maybe some subgroups, you know, kind of independently, would it be able to actually account for that? So let's see how it goes here. Let me just double check the time on that. So let's add in the first group. All looks good and smart there so far. Stand by. All right, so I want you to pay attention to smart here. You're not going to hear this because I'm not doing it in the actual matrix. I'm only doing it in the reference matrix for be able to show it. All right, so what I want you to pay attention to here is the magnitude trace against the phase trace, okay? So magnitude is the bottom line. Phase is obviously the top line, right? So obviously we have a good phase trace right now. We know we got a good clean signal. We can verify that by turning off the delay compensation. So yeah, we got a good clean signal in terms of impulse right now, right? Now we're going to start adding things to our matrix that are above and beyond that. Now remember, these subgroups that I'm adding are also in the left-right. So just over. Make sure you understand this, because this is kind of the money. So remember, this left-right bus that we see here already contains these subgroups. We're just going to add more of the subgroup. It also contains, oops, not that one. It also contains this noise channel, but we're going to add some more of that as well and see if it will keep this all in phase, right? Then I'm actually going to turn it up into an auxiliary, which is here, and add that in and see if it keeps all that in phase too. Okay, everybody with me so far? All right, so I'm going to get back over here now. And here we go. I'm going to turn on one group. And notice the magnitude trace climbs, which means we have positive gain there. Phase trace stays clean. Add another subgroup. Magnitude trace climbs, phase trace stays clean. Let's see what happens when we turn the noise on. Yeah, the input coming into that matrix also causes the magnitude trace to climb, which means we're in positive gain territory, no cancellation. Let's see what happens in the aux. And now we'll turn on the aux, and sure enough, now that same noise input going through an aux added up into the matrix, and all of that stays clean, right? So we can rest assured that if we add all of those things together in the matrix, that time alignment is still taking place, right? This was a late addition. We didn't do this in the early days of VENUE, but we did it in the later days. Questions on that? I'll turn off the noise here. Pretty cool, huh? Which, you know, delay compensation can work. You know, a lot of consoles actually can do very similar or close to this. You know, a lot of the consoles are handling output compensation pretty elegantly today, but nobody's really dealing with the input side. And, you know, even if you guys, you know, if somebody wants to bring up the thing, well, what about Midas or Yamaha? They compensate on the input side. Well, not for digital inserts, they don't, right? If it's an analog insert where it's a fixed amount of time of A to D conversion, yeah, they can handle that compensation. But as soon as you put a server there, or, you know, anything that doesn't report its actual latency back to that insert, not accounting for that, you know, not accounting for that. At least not that I'm aware of. If somebody knows different, please speak up. All right. What do you say, fellas? Any good?
Yeah, awesome, man. Thank you, Robert.
Yes, thank you, Robert. That
Thank
was
you.
outstanding.
Very good.
Robert.
Thank you.
Okay.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it was awesome.
So you guys digging the lab? You think this concept's going to work out?
You'll
Killer.
be there a long
Yes.
time.
That's great.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. It opens
Very
it
good.
opens it up
Definitely
to
the
a
future.
number of other projects.
Awesome.
Forward to the manual delay compensation.
Yeah, that's coming. It's a bear, but it's really cool. I mean, again, not to let the cat out of the bag, but you know, if you can dive into the concept of working with a template that you've pre-built that has, you know, any kind of input and insert path that you're going to use, you're ready to go. It's almost like working on Festival Patch, you know. And it's not like you're starting with the same drum sound or any of those kind of things, because you're going to work from your template with all of the stuff in bypass, but accounting for the time, right?
Yeah.
And I've come up with a way, and again, I messed it up so many times before I actually came up with a way to do it, where, you know, once you discover your longest path, which ends up having to be your reference path, I actually add some buffer to that. So maybe I'll add 25 samples to that path in addition to what it already has. That way I can insert any other plugin that I want. I can change a plugin as long as the net time does not change for that input. Then I know I'm going to be in good impulse for the rest of the console.
So that gives you a little bit of headroom for what you might want to do later on.
Yeah, yeah. So if I'm working and I say, oh, boy, I would love to use that plugin on this insert. Yeah. Well, yeah, that's cool. Actually, I'll load this here real quick. We're going to go a little over time, and I'm really happy about that. So let's do.
But don't you think this subject opens the door to other subjects, such as perhaps managing resources during your mix? Because we all know that we've all been in situations where we don't necessarily need to have a drum compression happening.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's just when to use. No, sure, I see what you're doing, but you know, we all know that we don't need to use all these techniques for every situation.
Absolutely not. And I'll just say this: I use the same template, whether I'm setting up for a jazz trio or I'm setting up for freaking Metallica.
And I'm sure
LA
if you don't
Philharmonic. I don't care.
And
I'm
if
using
you
the
don't
same
need to
template.
use it, you just don't send it. Yeah.
That's right. You just don't use it. That's exactly right. All right. So what I have up now, let me get back over and clear my annotation here. I'll kind of bait the hook here a little bit in terms of how I'm doing this. Let's move this back up here. This is a big show file I was working with I mean, I used all 192 inputs on the console for this particular show. And it's a completely aligned show file. But you'll notice here, one of the ways I keep track of it is if you can see up in this area, and I learned to do this just really as a safety net as much as anything. Where is my cursor? There he is. If you look right up here, in the name is a number. And it doesn't matter what input I'm in, that input's got a number. And that number is the delay time that is needed in that input to get it at impulse in the console. That's the way I keep track of it, right? So just, again, just kind of let the cat out of the bag. My longest path in this particular show file is the snare top microphone. That's the longest path through the console. And as you can see, I've added 20 samples to it. So the idea would be if I need to go in and change one of the plugins in that, I just need to make sure that my net time is that 20, right? So if I was going to change twin tube out from something that was 10 samples to 5 samples, well, then I would adjust that buffer to make the net time the same after you have to do a little math. I know we don't like to do the math, but we have to do a little math. We'll add and subtract there. But as you can see here, every one of my channels is accounted for, right? Everything has its own delay time there. And you'd be surprised how quick you can do this. I'm serious. You know, because obviously if you don't have to do it necessarily for every channel. Like in this situation, I had, you know, a ton of strings, right? So this is a violin. Well, all of those violins are taking the same path. So they're all going to be 632. So you can just, you know, select them all, enter 632, and now they're all 632, right? But again, I have that kind of pre-done. It's already pre-done, and I just pull up violin channels or viola channels, and I know it's right. I don't have to worry about it.
So 632 is like what, 6.5, 7 milliseconds of latency, probably.
Yeah, if you want some really scary numbers here, my entire console buffer is about 10.5 milliseconds, input to output. Yeah. So chew on that a little bit. You know, this is what the rack looks like. Yeah. So you got to be careful with it. You know, you got to be careful. I overdid it. First couple of times I did it, you know, especially I was using the Avid, the subharmonic plugin, and I wanted to get the entire mix in phase with that. So I would just take the return path of the subharmonic and take it directly to the matrix and then align my mixes to it. And the first time I did it, the throughput on the console was 19.5 milliseconds. And I went in and turned the PA on, and I mean, in a big place, and the back line was hitting me before the PA was hitting me, you know, because you got to keep in mind, I mean, that's console time. You know, there's other DSP after the console, blah, blah, blah. I mean, the entire path was probably 35 milliseconds by the time it was done. So you got to be careful. You got to be careful. You got to be aware, for sure. Sound like fun? Have I baited the hook for everybody? Everybody want to come back and see this process?
Yes.
Absolutely. Yes, definitely.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Are you a believer in FFT?
It's the only way to do it.
It's honestly, it is the only way to do it. And you know, I say this in all my seminars and my clinics. If you're a sound guy, if you are claiming to be a sound guy by profession in the year 2020, and you don't know how to operate an FFT, I cannot call you a sound guy. Now,
You mean
I know
the
that's going
transfer
to.
function?
I know, yeah.
Transfer function.
Transfer function.
FFT is just the RTA, and I mean that's pretty much. But the
It's
transfer
not-
is what with all the phase and all that other stuff we're looking at.
Yeah, it's FFT, fast Fourier transform, right? Because it's so important. I mean, you know, think about it now. I mean, Paul Dalen will back me up on this because I think me and Paul went to our first SynodCon seminar together in 1983.
We did.
Once we got our first look at the time domain, I think everybody in the room just started realizing we are so screwed right now. I mean, if we can't get our arms wrapped around the time domain, you are never going to have good audio. Never going to have it.
That's the problem I see with most, at least younger engineers. Well, some older, but they just have no real concept about phase and what time
time
actually means.
Time challenges and time obstacles are everywhere in LiveSap. And we're just creating a whole bunch more of them now.
Plus, Smart has that free demo, so everybody can go and download it and play with it and figure it out.
Yeah, I encourage you, if you haven't done it, get some training. The Smart training is absolutely fantastic. Sim training is really good. But start to get your arms around FFT and how to use it. I've said it and I'll stick by it. I could probably do it without FFT. If you want me to, I'll show you methods for doing it without FFT, but I can't do it near as fast or near as accurate. No way. It's just a tool. It's just a tool. All right. Well, we're 10 minutes over today, and that's okay for our first one. That's all right. So I'm going to pull the plug on us here. I'm sure you guys got a lot to think about. And we'll see you next Monday. I would say to you, please send me questions if you want in the mail, but I'm just going to be honest, I'll never get to them. I have too much on my plate right now to answer questions specific to this. But we're going to keep coming back here every Monday. And, as far as I'm concerned, we'll just stick on this topic until everybody's kind of happy with it and kind of getting it together. Peace.
Awesome hang, Rob. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, guys, look for the other, I'll send out, now that you're on the distribution list, I'll send you information on the other sessions that I'm going to be doing. Avid will be handling all the outreach for the webinars. I'll handle all the outreach for the back lounge on Friday, where we can sit and rub each other's shoulders a little bit and make everybody feel okay. All right. We'll see you guys. Be good.
Thank you.
Take care of yourselves. We'll see you soon.
Thanks, Robert.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Robert.
Thanks.
Thank you, Robert.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Cheers. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert.
Thanks, man.